sometimes I get keyboards and products into the office to review that just aren't my style, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do love trying things that are out of my comfort zone or just not something I would normally buy with my own money. And Epomaker did send us something. It's the TH80 Pro mechanical keyboard. And this totally fits that mold of what I was just talking about, because this is a keyboard that if I saw it on Amazon, I most likely would not have purchased it. In this configuration, it's the Monet color variant. It's very fascinating, yet it's oddly out of place thanks to a multifunction knob that we'll take a look at. And I just can't stop staring at it. It's just very bizarre to me. And before I jump into the review, I just wanted to thank Epomaker for sending us a review unit of the TH80 Pro. We definitely appreciate it. However, they are not going to be reviewing or watching this before we publish the video. You guys are going to be the first one to watch it. And all my thoughts are just that. My thoughts after using it I used this one for quite a long time, a couple months. So let's talk about the TH80 Pro. Let me preface by saying I don't think the TH80 Pro is an ugly keyboard at all. Like, I may not like the look, and I don't think the design and the color scheme is my cup of tea, but it doesn't mean it's ugly. I do think that someone out there will appreciate it. And this design, I do want to also say, I feel like it could fit in on basically any type of desk setup. It's a very clean aesthetic. The body is a white plastic all around. It's solidly put together. I don't hear any creaking when fiddling with the keyboard and kind of like, scrunching it together. It's built really well. As the name suggests, Epomaker provides us with 80 hot swappable keys. That equals to a 75% keyboard layout. It's also a fully wireless Bluetooth keyboard, meaning that you can connect it in 3 ways. One is, of course, the 5.0 Bluetooth connection. And then the second way is the 2.4 gigahertz receiver that you can plug into a USB port on your computer. And of course, the last one is you plug it in directly using the USB-C to USB-A cable to your PC. Connectivity wirelessly is pretty good. I haven't had any issues. It just connects immediately. It recognizes it. My PC and my Macs all recognize this instantly. The only issue is it's a little slow to wake from sleep, and it's very aggressive in going to sleep, and we'll talk about that later on as well. But at least everything works according to design. And I keep repeating myself, even though I don't love the look, I do have to praise Epomaker for the TH80 Pro's design, because it's super clean. The entire frame of the board, all 4 sides, there's only one port. There's only one hole on the entire frame, and that's on the top left for USB-C charging and connection there. That's the only port. There's nothing else, because everything else is on the underside of the board. So instead of throwing everything on the frame like most of the keyboard makers do, Epomaker actually put them all on the underside of the keyboard. We do have a USB receiver that houses in there, so it's pretty nice that if you're not using that receiver, you can store it in there and not lose track of it. There's also a toggle switch down there that controls that USB receiver on and off. Then, of course, we have the feet. The configurable feet has 2 angles. They're actually very high up there. The angles are very sharp, and at the highest elevated angle, T80 Pro tilts up really high off a surface. Our PBT keycaps on the Monet scheme are on this kind of pastel color spectrum with 4 different shades of colors occupying the entire board. I don't love the look. I keep saying this. I don't love the look because there is a lot of color everywhere, especially when you turn the RGB on and the lights are flashing and kicking in. It's just a lot of colors going on here. It certainly is unique, though, in that the color layout kind of slants towards the left in different kind of pyramid configurations in really uneven distribution. I don't understand at all what the design cues or design language is. Okay, so it took me a while. It took me a while to realize the Monet version is named after the French painter Claude Monet, and there was no marketing scheme talking about this, no pamphlets or anything discussing a collaboration or tribute. And that's when I started, oh, of course, the color scheme I guess could represent like a Monet painting very broadly. I don't know. It's a stretch even for me. So I guess the uniqueness doesn't end with just the color scheme of the keycaps because the Monet tribute continues on with the volume knob, which is shaped like a round marble thingy mabob. I don't know. Honestly, I was kind of baffled at how strange it looked when I pulled it out of the box, and I just kept staring at it. I just couldn't keep my eye off it because it just looked so out of place. But once I realized it was based on Monet, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it has something to do with that. It clicks for pause and play just like any other volume multi-function knob does. Rotates for volume. I mean, it works, but it just looks weird. It's a dark, shiny orb. I've never had a dark, shiny orb as a volume knob. It just kind of feels weird. It looks kind of weird. So maybe this design choice is flying over my head and it's some kind of brilliant callback to painting, but I have no idea how this correlates with the rest of the board design. But that could just be me being brain dead about this. For the actual like typing experience, the TH80 Pro model that we have comes with something called the Epomaker Butteriger switches. I hope I'm saying that right. They're kind of these blue colored switches. The board is, of course, hot swappable. So if you don't like the way this sounds, you can get it. You can swap it with 3 or 5 pin switches that you like. The switches are very muted and don't really emit that much of a sound pattern, at least to my ears. So my tolerance level, I guess, for sound, this is very, very low on the threshold. I found this keyboard to actually be very comfortable to type on due to a mixture of reasons. There isn't a lot of resistance upon input, and the keys don't really spring back up as sharply as I'm normally accustomed to using on my keyboards. That has allowed me to type, I think, a bit faster than I normally do because my fingers just fly through the board without making a lot of errors that I normally make. That second reason also has to do with that comfortable spacing of the layout. For a 75% board, I do think this is really spacious. I certainly felt like the board was larger than the size would suggest. It might be perception, but the keycaps also felt puffier, I guess, and easier to strike. I don't love gaming on here because I do like more clicky recoil for those needs, but I certainly enjoyed typing on the TH80 Pro. There's not a whole lot of spacing between the rows of the keycaps. Epomaker utilizes a south-facing RGB format here like they do with a lot of their products, and I think it was a wise choice because, like I said, those kind of marshmallow-looking keycaps are occupying a lot of space. They're thick, and would make it very difficult for, I guess, the viewer or the typer to see and appreciate the RGBs if it's not directly facing us, so the south-facing definitely helps here. The RGBs themselves are a very standard affair here. You got the basic effects here and the basic color standard stuff here. Nothing too different. I wouldn't consider the RGB to be a highlight of the TH80 Pro, especially this Monet variant. I don't think the RGB goes too well with this color layout of the keycaps because the keycaps don't have pass-through on the letterings either. So you're really just getting a little sliver of RGB here. They do a basic job of accenting the board, and that's acceptable for a board like this. As for the battery life, the 4000 milliamp hour battery is pretty good. I've used this as my office keyboard for a few months now. It's been a while, and I've probably plugged it in maybe 3 times max. So I would say about like 10 to 15 days of a 8-hour work day that I would kind of just periodically use my keyboard. That's quite good by my standards here. The keyboard accomplishes these numbers by having, as I mentioned earlier, a very, very aggressive sleep pattern. It goes to sleep very quickly, and this normally would be a good thing, but I found myself getting a little bit annoyed over time with just how slow the Epomaker TH80 Pro woke up. It takes a while for this thing to wake up. There was a lot of times where I just came back down into my office and I needed to do a quick search on the web, and I'm typing and I realized I missed the first 5 words that I typed in because keyboard wasn't awake fully yet. If I had one wish list for an improvement of this board, it would be that it had a quicker wake up time because it is noticeably slow on this one. Otherwise, there's not a lot to dislike about the TH80 Pro. While its artistic charm may not be on the top of my curated tastes, I can still absolutely recognize and admit that this offers a lot of value because this product is a good typing experience. I guess the biggest question is, will Monet fans actually want a keyboard themed after his work? That's the actual question we should be asking.
So the other day, I was on a Zoom call at work, and I just dropped everything I was saying, and I told them, subscribe.